You see their name light up on a phone, and your stomach drops. A moment later, the room feels thinner, air pressed flat by a sudden gravity. A memory you never wanted wakes. A door closing, a hand slipping away, an empty chair. The feeling has a sound, a small, sharp inhale that quickens a heartbeat. It is ancient and modern at once, a whisper and a roar. What is this sensation? Why does a single image or a private thought have the power to tilt a day? And more importantly, what is it trying to tell you? Jealousy is familiar and disarming. We tell stories about it with laughter. I get jealous sometimes, as if it were a social peccadillo. But beneath the jokes, jealousy is a powerful psychological engine. It can signal genuine threats to a relationship. It can motivate repair. It can also become corrosive, a pattern of thought and action that erodes trust, autonomy, and peace. Tonight, we will look into that engine. We will trace jealousy from its evolutionary roots to the small cognitive moves it relies on, from attachment wounds to cultural accelerants like social media. We will meet people who felt the burn and either use it to find truth or let it feed a slow ruin. I will not offer a list of exercises. Instead, I will offer a clinician's map, explanations, markers, and the language you can use to make sense of what you feel. Understanding is not a cure, but it is a doorway. If you are watching, notice one thing now. Where in your body does jealousy show up? Is it weight in the chest, a coldness in the stomach, a tightness in the throat? Keep that sensation as we move. It's data. Jealousy is an emotional response to a perceived threat to a valued relationship or resource. It is distinct from envy. Envy is covetous, wanting what another possesses. Jealousy is protective, fearing loss. Psychologists sometimes define jealousy as a triadic emotion. It involves three players: the self, the valued other, and a perceived rival. The rival can be a person, a situation, or even an imagined possibility. Important clarifications. Jealousy as signal. In many contexts, jealousy warns us. A partner's withdrawal may truly threaten a bond. It can motivate conversation, boundary setting, or re-engagement. Jealousy as poison. Unchecked, jealousy becomes an internal narrative that seeks proof, punishes doubt, and reduces the other to an object of surveillance. Normal is not equal to harmless. Feeling jealous is normal. Acting on it in ways that harm others or self is not inevitable and deserves attention. We will treat jealousy as a complex adaptive mechanism. One that once served survival, now enters a different world of relationships, social media, and shifting expectations. To understand why jealousy feels so urgent, travel back with me briefly to ancestral landscapes. Among early humans and our primate cousins, social bonds matter for survival and reproduction. Losing a cooperative partner, someone who shared food, childcare, or defense, could reduce one's chances of surviving or of offspring surviving. Natural selection favored systems that guarded important relationships. In evolutionary terms, jealousy is an alarm system. Different forms of jealousy can be tied to differing reproductive challenges. For men, evolutionary theories historically emphasize sexual jealousy, guarding paternity against cuckoldry. For women, theories emphasize emotional jealousy, guarding investment and commitment from diversion to others. These evolutionary frames are not moral commands. They are descriptions of pressures that shaped human minds over millennia. The alarm bells that once saved lives now ring in living rooms, on phones, and inside anxious thoughts. They are as old as our species, but their context has changed. Important caveat: evolutionary explanations describe tendencies, not deterministic rules. Culture, personal history, and individual reflection alter how the alarm is interpreted and acted upon. Jealousy is more than a phrase. It is a body state. Neurobiologically, several systems converge. The amygdala, quick threat detector, often activates during perceived social threat. The hypothalamic pituitary, adrenal, HPA, axis triggers cortisol release, heightening anxiety and vigilance. Reward circuits, dopamine pathways, interact when the perceived rival threatens desirable outcomes. They're also involved in pursuit and in the craving for reassurance. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, can paradoxically intensify jealousy when social ties are activated and threatened. These systems do not speak in words. They produce bodily sensations, moods, and attentional biases. When your brain perceives a threat to a relationship, it narrows attention, a classic survival move. That narrowing helps find danger quickly, but also amplifies small cues into looming patterns. The neurobiology explains why jealousy feels urgent and hard to reason with. The body is mobilized before the mind has time to narrate. Recognizing this is a first step. Your reactions are not merely moral failures. They are embodied responses shaped by physiology. Attachment theory reframes jealousy as a relational dance rooted in early experience. From infancy, humans form attachment patterns with caregivers. These patterns shape expectations about availability and safety in later relationships. For broad patterns, secure attachment, comfortable with closeness and autonomy. Jealousy tends to be proportionate and discussed. Anxious, preoccupied, intense worry about abandonment. Jealousy often erupts in clinginess or hypervigilance. Dismissive, avoidant, uncomfortable with dependency. Jealousy may present as cool withdrawal or moralizing of the other's needs. Fearful, avoidant, disorganized, contradictory approach and avoidance. Jealousy can be chaotic, rapid shifts between pursuit and push away. If you grew up with inconsistent caregiving, love offered unpredictably, affection alternately warm and withheld, your nervous system learned to be highly sensitive to cues of abandonment. In adulthood, a delayed text or a late return can reactivate an old insecurity. What appears as an adult problem is often the echo of a childhood strategy that once maximized survival. Be hyper-alert to threat, so you are not surprised. Clinical note: attachment patterns are templates, not prison cells. Awareness allows repair. Jealousy thrives inside thinking patterns that distort evidence and amplify threat. Cognitive psychology gives us precise words for these moves. Common cognitive features: selective attention, fixating on potential threats while ignoring reassuring evidence. Confirmation bias, seeking information that proves a suspicion. Catastrophizing, turning small ambiguities into catastrophic narratives. If they're late, they must be leaving me. Mind reading, assuming you know the other's intentions without evidence. Black and white thinking, interpreting actions as absolute signs. If they did X, they must be bad. These cognitive heuristics reduce uncertainty in the short term by producing coherent narratives, but they do so by excluding nuance. The mind prefers a story, even a wrong one, over ambiguity. A clinical image: the jealous mind is a tunnel-lit lantern. It lifts one small beam and refuses to look at the periphery. The beam reveals what it seeks and hides what does not fit. The challenge is not to shame the mind for its shortcuts, but to notice the lantern and widen its beam. Am I a Nice Story 1, the late message. She saw a message at 2 a.m. from a name she didn't know. It wasn't explicit. It was a simple thanks with a thumbs up emoji. Her chest tightened. She replayed the day, the past month. A late meeting, a new project, laughter and photos with a colleague. She imagined closeness that hadn't existed. Her thoughts moved quickly. What was unsaid became a narrative of betrayal. She called, voice small. He sounded tired, annoyed at the interruption. He mentioned a team chat about a client. She felt embarrassed, but relieved. Relief didn't last. The image of the thumbs up lingered, cycled like an abrasive stone. 2 months later, she described the experience as a small crack that grew. Small behaviors that once passed became evidence. Small pieces of distance were woven into a story that eroded trust. The crack was real because, in reaction, she began to behave in ways that made him withdraw, creating a feedback loop. This story shows the interaction of selective attention, attachment anxiety, and behavior that can generate the very outcome the fear predicted. Our social world amplifies jealousy in new ways. Social media is a tailor-made accelerator. Curated feeds emphasize highlight reels, not messy lives. Visibility becomes a currency and comparison is constant. Mechanisms: asymmetric information. You see others' public-facing moments, but not private context. Public metrics, likes and comments quantify worth in a visible ledger. Algorithmic prioritization, content that triggers emotion, including jealousy, spreads. Engagement is rewarded. Parasocial relationships, one-sided attachments to creators fuel comparisons and imagine relationships. In this environment, normal jealous responses are triggered by images, not events. Seeing a partner's past tag photo or a collaborator's smile with someone else can be enough. Social media also increases surveillance possibilities, scrolling someone's likes, checking stories. These behaviors feel like information gathering, but often function as confirmatory rituals, feeding the anxious pattern. Cultural norms about romance, success, and visibility shape jealousy as well. In societies that prize constant availability and visibility, absence becomes suspect. In others, privacy norms diffuse suspicion. The landscape matters. Jealousy carries two faces, messenger and weapon. As messenger, jealousy can signal unmet needs, emotional distance, or changes in investment. It can motivate honest conversation. I felt left out when you stopped sharing your day with me. Used this way, jealousy can be an entry point to repair. As weapon, jealousy can be weaponized by others or become a weapon of the self. Controlling behaviors, surveillance, punishment, and shaming are forms of using jealousy to dominate. In intimate partner violence, jealousy is often a declared motive or a rationalization for controlling tactics. The difference hinges on choice and consequence. A feeling is data. Behavior is decision. The same initial alarm can lead to a clarifying conversation or to coercive control. Recognizing the dual potential is essential for ethical relationships. Clinical marker. When jealousy is accompanied by attempts to restrict autonomy, it moves beyond signal into harm. Am I a Nice Story 2, the smooth control. He would joke about checking in, a playful text, then another. She laughed at first. The jokes became a ritual, a question about who they were with, a request of phone just to see. The tone was light. The message mattered. She felt increasingly constrained, as if her life were being gently narrowed. He called it care. She later called it suffocation. When she resisted, he framed her boundaries as betrayal. If you loved me, you'd understand. Friends began to step back as the couple's hours tightened. The control was smooth, disguised as concern, and its power lay in its plausibility. The story ended in quiet isolation. She left, exhausted and unsure how the love she'd once welcomed had dried into a need for ownership. This is a common pattern. Control that frames itself as protection. The psychology here is important. Control is often justified by fear. The fear may be real, but the remedy control creates its own harm. Most jealousy is proportionate and temporary. Pathological jealousy is relentless, intrusive, and damaging. Clinical presentations may include Othello syndrome, delusional jealousy fixed false beliefs of infidelity despite evidence to the contrary. Obsessive jealousy, intrusive thoughts, compulsive checking, and impairment. Jealousy in the context of personality disorders or substance use. Intensification and poorer insight, signs that jealousy is clinically concerning. Persistent suspicious belief resistant to evidence. Compulsive behaviors, constant checking, surveillance. Severe mood consequences, depression, suicidal ideation. Escalation to aggression or coercion. Pathological jealousy often requires professional intervention. Psychotherapy, sometimes medication for co-occurring anxiety or mood disorders, and in acute cases, safety planning. If jealousy leads to threats or violence, safety is the first priority. Jealousy is shaped by gendered narratives and cultural scripts. In some cultures, jealousy is valorized as proof of love. In others, it is seen as a moral failing. Gender norms influence how jealousy is expressed and received. Cultural expectations of male sexual possessiveness or female emotional vigilance create different social acceptability for jealous acts. Intersectional note: race, class, religion, and other social factors change the stakes. For example, in communities where marriage is a primary route to economic security, threats to a partner may have higher practical consequences and produce different patterns of jealousy. Recognizing cultural context avoids pathologizing reactions that are adaptive to particular environments. A clinician's caution avoids simplistic, monolithic claims about men's jealousy or women's jealousy. Individual variation and cultural nuance matter. M&I Story 3, The Family Legacy. She grew up watching her mother demand knowledge of where her father went each night. Suspicion was a family ritual. Questions were armor. As an adult, She recognized a pattern in herself, an urgent need to track. She moved countries, changed partners, but the itch remained. In therapy, she traced a pattern to early nights when the family's future felt precarious. The surveillance once worked as an attempt to secure a fragile home. In time, she learned to separate the past emergency from present reality, not by erasing vigilance, but by learning to ask, is this danger now, rather than, does this look like the danger I remember? Family legacy often sets the baseline script. Therapy can reauthor the script toward calibrated responsiveness. How we name jealousy changes our relationship to it. Language can escalate or soften. Consider these contrasts. You're making me jealous versus when you do X, I feel unseen. You can't talk to them versus I notice I get anxious when you spend time with them. Naming the internal experience, emotional labeling, is a psychological skill. It reduces limbic intensity by recruiting the prefrontal cortex. Saying, I feel insecure instead of you made me jealous shifts the locus from accusation to internal state, making conversation less defensive. That doesn't mean taking full responsibility for another's behavior. It means offering a window into one's experience that can invite curiosity rather than combat. Clinically, affect labeling is a small intervention with measurable calming effects. When jealousy flares, talk matters. Here are clinician-tested conversational moves designed to stay tethered to safety and curiosity. 1. Ground first. Pause and breathe. If you're swamped by adrenaline, wait until you can speak with a baseline of regulation. Start with, I'm feeling triggered right now. Can we talk in 20 minutes? 2. Use first-person feelings. I felt anxious when I saw that post. 3. Describe behavior, not motive. When you didn't answer my call, I worried. Avoid mind reading. 4. Invite collaboration. I want to understand this with you. 5. Offer small requests rather than an ultimatum. If you could tell me when plans shift, I'd feel more secure. 6. Watch for re-traumatization. If the partner responds with contempt or threats, prioritize safety. These dialogues are not scripts that eliminate pain, but tools to keep conversations from becoming escalatory. The aim is to create information, not to win. Am I a nice story 4? The silent agreement. A couple discovered they had different rules about friendships with ex-partners. He assumed anything goes. She felt threatened and expected disclosure. The mismatch produced a quiet erosion, lukewarm responses, withheld affection, then a blow-up. They tried a different script, an hour of calm conversation where each described what they needed and why. He learned she needed explicit reassurance. She learned he needed autonomy. They drafted a small agreement, not a contract to control, but a phrase, keep me in the loop. The phrase didn't solve everything, but offered a mechanism for trust to be rebuilt. Agreements like these work because they convert assumptions into negotiated norms. Not all jealousy requires therapy, but seek help when jealousy is relentless and causes impairment. Compulsive checking or surveillance dominates daily life. Jealousy leads to aggression or threats. There's co-occurring substance misuse that amplifies reactions. Effective clinical pathways. Individual psychotherapy, CBT, schema therapy, or psychodynamic approaches to map triggers and restructure narratives. Couples therapy to improve communication, clarify expectations, and rebuild secure patterns. Medication when co-occurring anxiety or mood disorders reduce capacity to regulate. Safety planning and legal supportive behaviors are coercive or violent. Clinical example, cognitive restructuring helps people test beliefs. If I check their phone and find nothing, what does that prove about my belief? Does it reduce my anxiety? Therapy transforms reactive cycles into reflective spaces. Jealousy pulls moral threads tight. People feel shame. I should be above this, or guilt. I hurt them with my suspicion. Shame isolates and incites defensive moves. Guilt can be a pathway to repair if it motivates reparation rather than concealment. Distinguish. Shame is self-condemning, global, I am a bad person. It narrows possibility. Guilt is specific and reparative. I hurt them with my words. I will try to apologize. Clinically, addressing shame involves externalizing the emotion, naming its origins, and reducing global self-attacks. Repair involves acknowledgement, apology, and behavior change. Responsibility is different from self-blame. Taking responsibility means owning patterns without turning them into a verdict of character. M.I. Story 5, The Apology That Built a Bridge. He read the message aloud, confessed the surveillance, and named the fear that had driven him. He did not justify. He said simply, "I'm sorry. I let fear make my choices." She did not forgive instantly, but the apology opened a conversation about vulnerabilities and histories. They negotiated a small plan for transparency and for timeouts when anxiety flared. Months later, he described a moment as the most honest thing I'd done. The apology did not erase jealousy, but it transformed it into a shared problem. Apologies that name internal states and avoid rationalization often create space for mutual understanding. Jealousy is not limited to romance. Professional rivalry, friendships, and family roles produce parallel dynamics. Office jealousy. A colleague promotion may trigger competitive narratives and destructive behaviors. Friendship jealousy. Perceived neglect or favoritism can corrode intimacy. Family dynamics. Sibling comparisons can lead to lifelong narratives of scarcity or competition. Patterns are similar. Perceived threat, selective attention, narrative construction, behavior that constrains. Interventions vary by context. Transparent conversations with managers, boundary setting with friends, and family therapy where patterns repeat across generations. Jealousy is not static. Across life stages, triggers and responses shift. Youthful jealousy may center on exclusivity and identity. Midlife jealousy can be about time, investment, or aging. Later life jealousy may be entangled with loss, health, and legacy. Long arcs show potential for growth. People who learn to narrate their needs, to cultivate multiple attachments, and to integrate loss experiences often experience jealousy differently. It becomes less volcanic and more informative. An occasional fire that prompts check-ins rather than a constant blaze. Cultural rituals, rites of passage, community roles, can scaffold this growth. Where such practices are absent, people may attempt to create them through relationships or careers, sometimes increasing stakes and vulnerability. M.I. Story 6, The Old Couple's Quiet Compromise. They had been married for decades. He liked quiet rituals. She preferred social evenings. When she started volunteering at a community center, he felt left out, the old fear of being replaced stinging in his chest. He could have responded with suspicion, but instead he asked her gently about what the nights meant. She told him stories of eager young people learning crafts and of a man who reminded her of her father. He listened, and then he asked to go with her once to see. The night showed him a world he hadn't known. Jealousy did not vanish, but became an invitation to participate. Inclusion, the simple practice of being invited, can transform jealousy from threat to bridge. Because you are a creator, here are phrases and tonal guidelines to use in narration and in suggested on-screen text. They preserve the mesmerizing tone while providing clinical clarity. Suggested lines. Jealousy is an old alarm in a new house. The body sound before the mind explains. You are not a monster for feeling this. You are a human with a history. A feeling is data. A behavior is a choice. Repair is not an event. It is a conversation that happens many times. Visual/text cues. Short overlays. Feeling equals data. Behavior equals choice. Gentle prompts. Notice where it lives in your body. Safety banner when discussing control. If you're in danger, contact local services. Tone notes. Use long, breathy sentences to embody the mesmerizing. Use short, clipped lines or warnings. They break the rhythm and signal importance. In clinical practice, jealousy often surfaces alongside other themes. Identity, shame, attachment injuries. Therapists focus on narrative work, tracing the history of the feeling, mapping triggers, and testing beliefs. Key therapeutic moves. Externalization, separating the person from the feeling. You are not your jealousy. Narrative reconstruction, retelling the story with context and compassion. Behavioral experiments, small reality tests in safe spaces to update beliefs. Integration, connecting present feelings to past needs without making the past deterministic. Therapists also attend to relational repair, facilitating conversations where both parties can express vulnerabilities without escalating. The clinician's role is not to eliminate feeling, but to enlarge the capacity to hold it. Relationships involve tolerances for quirks, for differences in styles, for histories. Not every jealous feeling demands relational overhaul. But when jealousy repeatedly creates harm, when autonomy is curtailed, or when patterns repeat across partnerships, change is ethical and necessary. Ask, does this relationship allow both partners to be themselves? Is there mutual responsibility for safety? Are boundaries consistently respected? Does the relationship nourish growth or stabilize fear? These are not easy questions. They require honest conversation and sometimes difficult choices. Jealousy is a strange mirror. It shows what we love and what we fear losing. It names the edges of our vulnerability and insists we reckon with them. Sometimes jealousy prompts repair. Sometimes it heralds a relationship's end. Neither outcome is moralized here. Both are part of the human story. If you listen carefully, jealousy teaches you two things: what you value and how your past shapes your present. The work, quiet, slow, and often unremarkable, is to translate alarm into information, to choose behaviors that align with your values, and to seek help when the flame is too hot to handle alone. If this video stirred something, leave one word in the comments. How jealousy feels to you out. If you found this helpful, subscribe for more psychologically grounded explorations and share with someone who might feel seen by this discussion. If you or someone you know is at risk because of controlling behavior or violence, reach out to local emergency services or a domestic violence hotline. In the United States, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233 safe. If you are outside the U.S., please contact local authorities or find resources through your national health services. We carry jealousy because we carry love and loss, history and hope. To live fully is to accept that some alarms will ring and some will be false. The art is to learn which require action and which require witness. Let curiosity be the lamp that widens your beam. Let language be the bridge that brings a person closer, rather than an accusation that pushes them away. Thank you for walking with me through this interior landscape. See you later.